With the seasonal story that is going on in Destiny right now, Bungie is slowly making a point. And it's a point that I think is very important. And that's why I wanted to make this video to talk about it. Because it's not always that games are successful in being political as well, or having like moral messaging in their storylines. But I think Bungie is doing it in a really great way here that doesn't disturb the story of the game. It feels like it's very like integrated in the universe and the story and the lore of Destiny. And it's just a very good example of a great way of implementing political or moral messages in the story of a game. You know, I'm actually a big believer in doing stuff like that. I know a lot of people think that politics should just be left out of games, but I really truly do believe that one of the only ways that we can change kind of like the global mindset about certain moral questions is through narratives. And I really also do believe that video games are one of the most, if not the most powerful storytelling mediums that we have. Just because being able to have agency in a story, being able to act out a story and not just see it or listen to it or read it, just makes you that much more immersed. And so you feel the story a little bit more than when you just read it or see it or listen to it. And so in this video, I'll go through what the point that I think Bungie is making is and how they're making it. What are the story elements of the season that is being used to kind of get this point across. I want to in advance apologize for my voice. I'm not really sick, but kind of a little bit. I don't know what it is. I got something in my throat. It's annoying, so bear with me. Actually my personal opinion is that when I'm a little bit sick like this, my voice sounds a lot better in the microphone. So enjoy the deep rumbling of my voice while it lasts. Hi guys, welcome to Gaming Watcher. My name is Rolson, and in this video we're going to talk about the race war that is currently brewing in the last city. So what we're kind of seeing in this season right now is that we have invited the Fallen into the last city, or Ikora has, and not everyone agrees with her. And it's kind of because of the backstory or the lore between Guardians and Fallen, because the Guardians and the Fallen, as we also covered in the Fallen Baby video, has been warring each other for as long as anyone can remember. And as we're learning about the Fallen, they used to have a society much like ours. They used to be a peaceful species. They had a home planet called Reese, and what has happened to them is truly devastating and sad. Their entire homeworld got overrun by a hive, and when that happened, the Traveler left them. When they needed it the most, the Traveler left the Fallen behind. And so that's kind of a underlying question mark. It's a question that we haven't really gotten an answer to yet. Why did that happen? Can it also happen to us? I guess in theory it can happen to anyone. That's the only thing that we can conclude from that. But there's another underlying question of, did the Fallen do something that made the Traveler leave? And what was that? Maybe this has been answered in the lore. I don't actually know. If it has, please leave a comment and help me out. But I don't think so, not in the lore that I have read at least. So the world of the Fallen is destroyed. It's overrun by a hive, and the Traveler leaves them, and so they're left to become this fractured species that are just moving around on their spaceships, being pirates trying to survive. And that of course has turned some of the Fallen evil and bitter and angry and violent, as it most surely would anyone. You know, losing everything, not just your home world and probably your family, but also losing the Traveler, which just, we all know that the Traveler it's pretty nice to have. It's neat to have, right? It's neat to have the Traveler in the light and be immortal and have like technology beyond your wildest imagination and new biomes to inhabit and stuff like that. That's pretty neat to have, and they lost that as well. So we have been fighting Fallen, and we have been seeing the Fallen as evil, as enemies, but it's not that simple. And that is the point that this season is trying to get across. And now that we have housed some fallen refugees in the city, and we're starting to learn about how they view us as guardians. And we're starting to see that things are not so different from their perspective. They see us as the same monsters as we see them. So actually, we should be able to relate to one another. We have so much in common. Like, our differences are actually what we have in common, right? They view us as monsters, we view them as monsters. They used to have the Traveler and then lost it. We can kind of sympathize with that. We have had our dark age, the collapse. We know what it's like when the world collapses around us, when you're forced into a like survival situation and you're not thriving anymore. We know what that's like. And yet, when they then come into our city, we don't see what we have in common. We look at our differences and we look at what has fallen in general done to guardians through the ages. And the Fallen look at us the same way. It's very important to remember, and that's an important distinction that I think Bungie has done a really good job of like implementing into the story. That is double-edged sword. The Fallen see the Guardians for what the Guardians has done to Fallen in the past. And the Guardians see the Fallen for what Fallen has done to Guardians in the past. And especially with this week's update on the story and the new Expunge mission and the story content that came after that, Lakshmi, we can understand that the people in the city are kind of starting to rise up against the Fallen that are in the city, you know. And that in itself is a very important message, I think, that, you know, you have these refugees. They're essentially harmless. They come here for shelter. They're inside our home, and we could just take them all out very easily. They're weakened, they're like protecting their children, they're hiding here, they're at the mercy of all of the Guardians. Like, remember, they're surrounded by Guardians, the most powerful beings in the universe, it seems. They pose no threat to us whatsoever, and still the people of the city are kind of rallying together into this mob that like tells themselves that they need to rise up against these Fallen, these totally harmless Fallen that are just seeking refuge and seeking safety for their kids and themselves. And the reason why the people is rising up is because they have someone like Lakshmi poisoning their minds by telling them about what has the Fallen done in the past. We can't trust people who has done stuff like that. And Lakshmi makes the exact same mistake as anyone who is pushing that kind of racist bullshit agenda. And that is that you take actions that some individuals have done and you kind of project those actions onto the entire species or the entire race, which in this case is the Elixir. So what Lakshmi is basically doing is condemning an entire race based off of the actions of individual people in this race. Sounds familiar? Like, we see this all the time in the real world, and it's so incredibly stupid. And now I'm gonna get political as well, like, but I really mean this. This is so stupid. Like, people are individuals and you need to view them as individuals. You can't just like say, okay, because someone of this particular race has done something, or because several people has done something, or even because a majority of people has done something, you cannot conclude that that's because they're of that specific race and that everyone else who is of that specific race would do the same. It's like the claim that race has anything to say in terms of what actions people are going to perform in life is ridiculous. What determines what people grow up to be or what they do with their lives is environment, and it's like genetics and environment. That's like what it comes down to. And by genetics, no, I don't mean skin color or race. By genetics, I mean like what characteristics have you gotten with you through your genetics that you have inherited from your parents and your grandparents and so on. There are different personality traits that are actually genetically determined. And by the way, genetics is also like a very like malleable thing. It's only some genes that actually express themselves in a person. It's not all of the genes that you have, and they can express themselves in a smaller or bigger way. Like, there's a lot of differences, and the environment that you grow grow up in has so much to say about what genes ends up expressing themselves and how much. And so none of this has to do with race. And of course there are statistical differences between different cultures, and that has to do with environment. When people grow up in different environments, they of course learn different things, they grow up differently and they do different things. And so there are some cultures where you can say, well, there's a larger percentage of like violence in this specific culture, but you cannot say that if a person of that race was raised up in another culture that they would act exactly the same, because they wouldn't, because it's not determined by the skin color or the race or anything like that. It's determined by the way that they grow up, the culture around them. And that's why it's so important to show love and compassion to everyone, regardless of race, regardless of nationality, regardless of anything really. Because the more we do that, the more we will create an environment that creates positive outcomes for people. And that is really the story that Bungie is telling in this season. That you have these refugees come in, and you have the people feeling insecure about this fallen coming in, this Elixir, because of what individuals of the same race as them has done. And you can even debate whether what they have done in the past have been evil. When you look at their story, they have almost been forced into doing these despicable actions by their unfortunate destiny or fate, you know. And I read this post on Reddit yesterday where this guy says that he finally understood why destiny is called destiny, and it has to do with the difference between fate and destiny. And he said that's this one sentence in the lore that says guardians choose their own fate or something like that. And that is exactly what it's all about. It's about when you choose your own fate, when you won't let the things that has happened to you in life, which is your fate, determine what you're gonna do in life, then you create your own destiny. And that is exactly what Mithrax and the House of Light is doing. They're choosing to not let the sad story of the fallen make them into these evil pirates. They're choosing the light. They're choosing to help the guardians because they believe that for some reason the traveler has chosen the guardians, and that must mean something, and they have faith in that, and they just carry out what they believe to be good. And so they're not doing like the rest of the fallen and just being victims to their fate. They are choosing their own destiny, much like the guardians. And Mithrax here is portrayed as like a very fair and conscientious leader of the fallen. And even though they suffer a lot of adversity in the city with the people and with Lakshmi, he still preaches peace. He still preaches harmony. He still tells his fallen that they need to meet the guardians with love and compassion. He's much like someone like Martin Luther King, actually. Like his message to the fallen bears a resemblance to the message of someone like Martin Luther King. And Lakshmi in this story appears as this, like some sort of racist propaganda, like radio host or something like that. They talk a lot about her broadcasts. She has these broadcasts that we have also heard, where she talks to the people about, like, can we trust the fallen? And she says that she has looked into the future and she has seen bloodshed, and we need to do something about these fallen that have come into our city before we end up there. And I think that what's actually going on is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like the reason why she sees this future is because she keeps preaching this hatred and this like she tries to divide the guardians and the fallen instead of uniting them. And that's what's going to lead to this bloodshed in the future. And because she sees this future, she thinks that she needs to rally up the people to save the city from this bloodshed by acting out bloodshed on the fallen. And it's ridiculous, but it's exactly the same messaging that we see in our real lives from racist like podcast hosts or radio broadcasters or anything like that. And it's really up to us to choose our own destiny and to choose how we're going to act in these instances. Are we going to go with the fear and the generalization? Are we going to look at these as fallen and just deem them evil because of what other fallen has done in the past? Or are we going to look at them with sympathy and empathy and see where they're coming from and see what they have been through and see that they are not just Elixir or fallen, they are individuals and they cannot be made accountable for the actions of other people in their species, just like we can't be made accountable for what Saint 14 has done or for what Lakshmi is doing or anything. You know, that's kind of almost the root of all evil, right? That you take something bad that has happened to you or to someone you know and you act it out on someone that has actually nothing to do with that, just because of who they are. Like, think of serial killers. Like, it's the same thing. They're like, they have some mommy issue and now they're just killing random women just because they're women and they look like their mom or something like that. Or school shootings, right? The root of all evil is taking some bad experience that you've had with an individual or several individuals and just taking it out on anyone that for some reason can be like grouped together with those individuals that did you wrong. And I'm not saying that revenge on the right individuals, if you can say it like that, is not evil. It's just revenge in general. It's just, it never leads anywhere good. And I think Bungie is really implementing this message in a beautiful way in the story. We get to experience this tension that has been created. And now I've been talking a little bit about how, like, even the place, the Elixir quarters in the tower has a story behind it that has to do with the fallen, and I've been making a little bit fun of that. But if you look at it in a more serious light, then I really think that Bungie is doing an amazing job of getting all of these little details in the story aligned so that they get this message across. You really get this feeling of empathy, like you're looking at the fallen in a different way because you get confronted with what we have done to the fallen and what the fallen has done to us, and you get the story of why, and you get the House of Light's perspective on those actions and can see that they're not like those fallen that we have fought before, like in the Scourge of the Past raid, for example. We learn about their traditions, we learn about their love for machines, we learn about their relationship with the Traveler, we learn about how they view the Guardians, and that is how you develop empathy for someone, is getting to understand them and learn about who they are and why they are that way. And I just really, I'm ending this now. This was a long rant kind of, but I just really want to say that I think it's great that Bungie is doing this. I think it's great that Bungie is making this point, and I think they're doing it in a very tasteful way where it doesn't become like obstructive to the story. It really feels like a very natural part of the story, and an alliance with the Elixir has been theorized for so long by fans and players of Destiny, so it seems very natural that this would happen. But I just think the way that they're telling this story and this kind of conflict that has arisen from the fallen moving into the city is just, it's an amazing way to actually make this point. This is what we're experiencing, and I look forward to see more of this story unfold as the season goes on. I'll keep making these videos commenting on the story. Now, the last one I made a lot of fun, and I'm gonna do that in other videos as well. Joke about it, joke about how we're terrible or the fallen is terrible, because sometimes you just gotta laugh at stuff, you know, even though it's serious issues. But sometimes you also have to take it seriously and just like note that something seriously is actually being said here and we can learn something from it. And so I'll just leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.